Okay. And before I was diagnosed, I was involved in natural food healing. I had moved to Boston after college and studied in a small community of people who were interested in natural healing using traditional Chinese medicine and uh, Japanese arts of cooking and healing, and some very ancient arts. And that's my background, that's my training. And at that time, it was primarily plant-based cooking. And then over the years, after I was diagnosed, I decided that that wasn't quite for me. And what works for me today is being an omnivore and eating a wide variety of foods. I don't really think there's any particular food that's a bad food. It's really just a matter of proportions and quantities and how to use foods that are healthy to dominate the way that I feel. And that's what the focus is going to be on tonight. One of the things that promoted me to study cooking was the scent of burnt string beans. Now, what do I mean by that? That was my childhood. My mom was a woman of great skill and love, but cooking was not her thing. And when you smelled smoke, you would know it's dinner time. And it was always string beans in the pot. So I was motivated to learn how to cook at a young age. Um, since I was diagnosed, I found that my cooking knowledge has helped me to move beyond a diagnosis of living with a chronic illness. It gave me tools to feel more centered and more, I guess I want to say, in control of my health that goes beyond insulin. Obviously, insulin is what keeps me alive, but yet I wanted to explore and find ways for healing that went beyond the basic medical model because it's just so very limiting. For That's how I experienced it. Um, so it was more like learning how to live on my own terms with natural foods and natural healing. For many years, I taught cooking, and primarily I worked with people with serious health issues. Everyone who came to my classes was dealing with a serious medical issue that they wanted to approach holistically, and that was the thrust of my teaching. Today, when I teach, it's far more broad, and I look to teach for everyone who wants to just maintain their health with healthy food. I'm going to just uh, jump for a minute to being in the kitchen and how to create a more mindful kitchen, as long as I can find that sheet of paper, which I did. Basically, what I'm suggesting is just to make your cooking life easier by creating order in where you cook. Less distractions, less clutter, less stuff that takes you away from the job at hand makes it makes a big difference because you can focus on what you're cooking and then how to generate a healing quality within that. If you give 10 people the same recipe, you'll get 10 very different results. Why is that? So many things make that happen. But I've seen that in teaching cooking, and everyone, puts their own slant, but they also put their own energy within the food. Now, that might sound kind of out there for some. Well, that's okay. But for me, I find it a real quality, a real aspect about food that can make it healing, and can make it more focused and grounding. Um, in terms of quality of ingredients, I think everyone should choose what works for them, whether it be a financial consideration or availability. Whatever works for you makes sense. The important thing is to have food that's vital, especially with produce. You want to select things that look good and look like the energy you want to have. So if you're seeing something that's organic and looks very tired, I usually will not buy that product. I would buy some produce that looks fresh and alive, and it may not be organic, but it may be grown from a local farmer. And that's a priority that I make when selecting produce. Let's leave the kitchen for a moment and just focus in on the how of eating. I know we're not there yet in this class, but I thought we would just stop here for a moment. What I'm suggesting that you do at meal times is give yourself what's considered generous attention. And that attention goes to your body, your state of mind, your stress level, so that you can check into whatever messages your body has once you slow down and check in. I know for me, for many years, I had issues with my digestion, and when I sort of changed my focus, it helped me to become far more sensitive. And what I try not to do when I'm, of course, at home and eating is to just take a moment and check in to see if I'm feeling stressed or not. I mean, for me, it's just right in my gut. And I will literally put my hand on my belly and I'll feel, do I feel tense? Does my belly feel soft? Because digestion is an act of receiving. And if your body is stressed and tight, it's not the best onset for digestion. You've probably heard that the first part of digesting takes place in your mouth. And that's because the more you chew your food, the more enzymes are released into your saliva. And that starts the digestive process in your mouth. And it starts to break down the food as it travels along. So it's a good habit. I mean, it's not one that I do all the time, that's for sure. But when I think of it, when I do it, it works better for me. Ideally, digestion can be a silent process. It doesn't have to be a lot of sounds and noises and disruption. It can be a smooth and easy kind of process. So I would encourage just the check in about how your body's feeling, what your stress level is like before you eat. And that way your body can become a better receiver. Also sit down and eat. Try not to eat standing if possible, because it makes a difference. Because when you're sitting, your belly is softened. If you're standing and active and doing a bunch of things, not so much. Anyone have any questions? You could just unmute if you do. If not, we will move along. Good to go? Okay, a few nods. I selected 3 different recipes that I wanted to share, and they each highlight a different kind of energy. The first one I've entitled Diabetes Sanga Salad, just because I thought it sounded so cute, but it really has nothing to do with the ingredients. I just like the name. And it's a salad. Are you able to pull it up and look at it or not? Not real? Yes? Okay, great. So normally when we think about a salad, we think about something raw, and this is not that. Just on the digestion front, when you have a vegetable and you cook it lightly, it's a lot easier to assimilate than if you're eating a big bowl of raw salad. For me, having had digestive issues during the course of living with type 1, I tend to be sensitive to that. So, what I suggested is a salad using three different ingredients. Um, I do have an assistant here who's been dying to get into the act. Here. So this might be his only job tonight, but he brought me one of these. I don't know if you can identify it. Perhaps you can. It's one of the most modest vegetables on the market. Who knows its name? Come on, team.
Is it
It's
a
a
golden
rutabaga.
beet? Oh,
It's a rutabaga. Yeah. Michelle, did you have a
I was gonna guess a golden beet, but I was like, a golden
well,
beet is not.
it could be, but this is a rutabaga. It's it's so modest and unassuming, and one would think, no, never. But yet it's good because it's a root vegetable and it tends to give very grounding, even energy. And yes, there are some carbs in it, but yet they're assimilated in a slow, even way, unlike like a shot of some source of glucose or sugar. So I did include that in this salad and also some carrot and broccoli. Um, this particular stalk of broccoli is not the best just because it's a little discolored on the top, and I just dug it out of my fridge for this tonight. But I will point out that the stalk is perfectly edible and it's a very good source of fiber and vitamin C. And you could take your knife and just cut away the thick part of the skin and have a very tender vegetable. And it can be used in soups or in like what we're making tonight with that boiled salad. Any questions or we're good?
Right.
Yeah.
I have one
Brooke.
question, and feel free to save this for later if it makes
Okay.
more sense with your presentation. But do you have any, or what would be your perspective when it comes to maintaining as much of the nutrient density of vegetables that you consume while still cooking them?
Well, something like the root vegetables, uh, they have some vitamin C, but it's not a perishable kind of vitamin C as you would find in a green, which loses a lot of its C rapidly. So I don't feel like there's a compromise with something like this. For this particular recipe, if the ingredients are sliced thin, you could cook them each for 2 to 3 minutes, and that improves the digestibility of it and there's very little nutritional loss. And if you feel a bit compromised, you could always drink the liquid or use it in a soup stock.
Love that. I love
But
that.
broccoli is not the best ingredient for a soup stock.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. I just also brought along some of these. Okay, this is the magic quiz. You gotta know it.
I'm not sure.
No, Dill. No. Oh, could you put it in front of the screen?
I think you're right.
Oh.
I heard dino tail.
What was that?
Is it dining kale?
No, it's actually dandelion greens. They're large ones. They're not your typical smaller ones. But I wanted to present them because they're an excellent source of chlorophyll. And I know for me in my cooking, I tend to get lax with greens, but they're really have great boosting element to how we feel. And it's nice to put just a little touch of greens into a variety of dishes just to get that boost, to get that chlorophyll, vitamin C, and also calcium. Michelle?
Can you go into your backyard and pick them, or do you have to get them from like a farmer's market or the grocery store?
You could get them from your backyard if the soil in your backyard is healthy and if it's not exposed to a lot of cars and exhaust and that kind of thing. You know, if it's pristine, why not?
Okay,
Definitely.
thanks.
Sure. So this could be an ingredient in this boiled salad as well, and you wouldn't even put it in the boiling water. You would just chop it up and place it in the colander and pour the hot water over it, and that would cook it. One last thing. Any
That's bok
takers? Yeah, this is bok choy, and it's a bok choy tip, which I had never seen before until recently, but it's the tender part of the bok choy. So that could also be added to this salad as well. So you make the salad and you put it in the colander and it drains out, and then you can take it and store it in your fridge and it will keep for several days. And you could then, you know, eat it for several days' time. I did include a dressing, but I'm not going to review that now. I got to get my assistant back into the act. He's getting antsy. So, does anyone have a question about this recipe before we move along? So the water's at a boiling temperature. You want to have plenty of water in there so that the veggies don't overcrowd. You take a slotted spoon, scoop them out, put it in a colander so that the excess water drains, and then you mix it together. Okay, let's move along. I have to shuffle some things around my desk. The next recipe is for a become belly tea, I believe. And I have an ingredient that I wanted to highlight because it is the be all, end all, best thing ever. So now is your moment. Now is your moment. What the heck is it? It's 3 syllables. The origin is Japan. It's a tremendous alkalizing agent. It's been fermented for 18 months, and it's a ancient tradition of food processing. And it is called an umeboshi, umeboshi, plum. Here it is in the package. This particular brand is one I like to recommend. It's Eden, which is a natural foods brand. And because this is fermented with salt, it's like a natural preservative. And it will keep and keep for years. I've been using this as a part of my natural apothecary for years because if my stomach is feeling upset or if there's any kind of acid condition, this helps to remedy it. What you do is you pinch a piece of the meat away from the plum and you can just tuck it into your cheek, and that mixes with the saliva in your mouth, which in turn goes into your digestive system. You can also take the meat away from the plum, and you're then left with the pit of it. And the pit can stay in your mouth for an entire day. And it's done that way traditionally, and it helps to remove the acidity in your gut. I've also used it for dental issues, and it acts as a natural anesthetizer to the gum tissue. It's not a remedy. It's not something you would use in place of dental attention, but yet it helps to calm down the area. What I suggested for this tea is a little more complicated than what I just described. It's a tea using umeboshi that's mixed up in water. And what you do is that you remove the meat from the pit of the plum, put it in water, and let it simmer. And after it simmers, you would then add, let's see, fresh ginger juice and natural soy sauce and turmeric, and then add something called kuzu. I'm going to take a few moments to talk about this. I would imagine most people have seen it, used it, know it. Maybe not. This is a fresh ginger root. When you use it for cooking, it's unnecessary to remove the skin. All you need to do is just wash it under cold water and remove the surface dirt. The skin is very thin. You don't have to remove it. If you ever see any bad spots or discoloration, you just take your paring knife and remove that. And also, if you ever see like an orangey kind of color, that's an indication that it's spoiled. So you would not want to use it if it has an orange tone or if it's a little bit sticky to the touch. It's kind of a general rule for most produce. Sticky is not good. Okay. Goes for tofu and tempeh too. So the ginger, you can, for this particular recipe, I've grated some. My whole kitchen is up here, by the way. I've grated some, and I've used a ginger grater. Can you see this clearly? No, I'm not. How's that? Is that better? It's a mesh grater, and it's very fine, and you just take it in your hand and you grate the ginger. So it's a small thing. You just hold it in the palm of your hand and you grate it. And ginger is used in a lot of cooking. The primary benefit is that it helps to boost our circulation. Now, I come from the land of cold feet and cold hands. Could be type 1 related. And ginger is a good remedy for that. You could add it to a soup or a stew or to a drink, which is what I'm doing tonight on this belly soother tea. So I've grated this, and the trick is to just add the juice and not the fiber, because the fiber does not break down and it gets stuck in your teeth. Not good. So what I'm doing is taking it in the palm of my hand, and I'll use my thumb I don't think you'd be able to see this, so I might not even do it, but I'll describe it because it won't be a mess. You take it and you press out the juice into something and keep the fiber in your hand. And that removes the ginger juice from the grated ginger. So that would be ideal for this particular recipe. And you could also use it for soups or any other cooking that you do. Whoops. Ginger has a natural pungent taste, and it's helpful to have a variety of tastes in our diet. For most American diets, tastes are two things, sweet and salty. But there's a few in between. And what's in between are
Bitter.
bitter, thank you,
Acidic.
pungent, and sour. So ideally, if we have a range of different tastes in our diet, it's to our benefit because each taste helps to nurture and balance a different internal organ. So you don't want to have a whole lot of salt and a whole lot of sweet and nothing in between. The 5 tastes correspond to different internal organs and in part correspond to different elements. And there's a whole study based on 5 transformations in um, in medicine, in traditional medicine. I'm not going to get into all that. I want to stick with the recipes. So, anyone have any good examples of a pungent taste? That's the hardest one. What is a pungent taste? Okay, that's the homework assignment. Okay, I'm going to carry on. Oh, geez. Good one. Yeah, yeah, I would have never have thought of that. Okay, um, I'm going to carry on with this recipe because I took that little sidestep with the ginger. I also just wanted to show you that you can use ginger like this, and by using it this way, you would just drop it into a pot of soup, and the ginger has that pungent taste, and it permeates the flavor of the soup. Too much is not appealing, but just a little bit, and you count the number of pieces you put into your preparation, and then you remove them. You don't serve them. So many different applications for ginger. I just want to check and see how we're doing for time. We're good. Okay, great. Um, Other things you could do with ginger for circulation is to take grated ginger and mix it into sesame oil. And you would make it pretty concentrated. Let's say 2 teaspoons of ginger juice to a tablespoon of sesame oil. Mix that, and then you could rub it into your feet, and it brings heat and circulation to your feet. Don't complain if your socks get a little funky, just throw them in the wash. But it's helpful for that. And people also sometimes will take ginger, ground it up like the size of a golf ball, and do a ginger scrub, going particularly around the lymph system, uh, the groin, the torso. You just, you wouldn't go along the heart or the genitals, but just your feet and your hands and your body and get a ginger scrub. And it's very energizing. Any comments or questions? Not
Okay.
quite a cooking class, but
Oh,
Right, Elle.
Oh, thank you. So I just thought that was interesting because I've also heard of capsaicin, hot pepper, as an analgesic too. So it's really, I just appreciate that information.
You're welcome. Okay. I've taught a lot of classes on different remedies of these foods, so I love going on tangents about it. One last thing on the ginger, and that is you could take that grated ball of ginger and submerge it into the bathtub. Squeeze out the excess ginger, and it is utterly delightful. If that doesn't sound delightful, then you could put it in a foot bath. And by doing that and pressing out the juice, I hope I mentioned that it's in cheesecloth. Did I? Wrapped in cheesecloth. Whoops. Make sure you wrap it in cheesecloth when you get that size. Um, in a foot bath at bedtime, especially if sleeping is an issue, because it helps to draw energy into your body because you're activating your body and you're drawing energy away from the thinking mind. It might sound simplistic, but it's that easy as a natural remedy.
Karen, may I ask one question quickly? That was in the
Sure.
chat, which is where can we find umeboshi plums? By
The short answer is Amazon. Truly, truly. Okay, moving along with this tea, I'm getting there, getting to the grand finale. One of the other ingredients is kuzu. Now, I don't know if you know of kuzu. It's something that's disdained because it's a very strong invasive, especially down south, and people are always trying to kill it off. This particular variety of kuzu comes from Japan. It's cultivated, and the good thing about it is that it's a natural thickening agent. It's kind of similar to cornstarch, but yet it's grown uh, from a deep root. It's not processed. It looks like an illicit drug. It looks like a white powdered stuff. You might not want to travel with it, but it it's used in this drink by taking the amount that's recommended and dissolving it in cold water. If you add it to hot liquid, it will congeal and it won't dissolve. So a little bit of kuzu added to this recipe makes a soothing kind of tea. If your bowels are super active, this is the tea to try. According to my recipe, I suggest your serving size be about 3 ounces. I think I called for 10 ounces in the recipe, but about 3 ounces would be ideal. And it might taste like medicine, it might not, it depends on what your tastes are accustomed to. I also called for using a little bit of natural soy sauce in this tea. And for people who avoid soy products, you can just omit it. But if that's not the case, uh, by using this, you're just adding additional minerals to the tea. And if if your system is overactive and if you have a lot of loose bowels, having more minerals like electrolytes are helpful, and you get a type of electrolyte by using the natural soy sauce. So, one last thing, which isn't that impressive, but count in what way?
Sorry, like count carbs. Do you give yourself an
No, no, there's no carbs to count, but you do need to count carbs with the kuzu. I think there's about 8 carbs in a tablespoon. And I find that I always have to account for them. It's not something I can just slip by.
Oh,
So I would suggest counting them for this. But for a serving size of only 3 ounces, not a whole lot.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah. What's interesting about the kuzu is that it heats to a very hot temperature, kind of like oil. I'm not sure why it does that, but it heats to a very hot temperature, and your body will really feel soothed by this, and it can function as a remedy for severe diarrhea or garden variety diarrhea. It can be very effective. Okay, soon we're going to move away from the bowels and go to the next recipe. Um, Last thing I didn't mention was the turmeric, and just a pinch of this is helpful because of its anti-inflammatory qualities. One thing I'll mention is that turmeric powder always needs to be cooked in order to get the benefit from it. Uh, Taking it as a capsule is really not advantageous. You always need to cook it to release the natural oils in it that make it healing. Michelle?
So I will I'll throw some if I get a turmeric root, I'll grate some just into my tea. Do you think that the hot water from the tea will cook it enough, or do I need to do something more? Like should I make like a potion of, boiling water and turmeric and then add that to my tea?
If you're using the fresh root, it's
Mhm.
not as potent as the dried powder.
Oh,
And I would take the fresh root and cook it longer, and cook it with a stronger potency than what I'm recommending in the recipe.
okay. Or maybe I should just get the powder then.
That would be easy. Yeah, that would be the simple plan. And when buying the powder, you want to take the extra step to make sure it's coming from healthy soil and it hasn't been sprayed and processed, which is oftentimes an issue with some of these herbs and spices, wanting to avoid that toxicity from these foods. Um, there's a company called Frontier Herb that I like, and they're a good resource for a variety of herbs and teas. Okay, I guess we are done with the drink, unless there's any questions around it. No? Good.
Actually, could I ask one quick one?
Of course.
Would it, so I've seen in other continents like Sweden, they make a turmeric tea. So they blend the turmeric and they might add a milk or some vegan milk and add cinnamon and some other things. Would any of that affect the medicinal quality of it to blend it like that, or is it best to leave it kind of untouched? Would you know? I don't know.
Um, I'm not sure exactly. I mean, as a golden tea, that kind of
Yeah,
recipe.
that's
Yeah,
it.
I mean, yeah, that's good unto itself. It's not the same as what I'm describing here. When you allow it to cook, ideally for at least 5 minutes at a minimum, that's how you help to activate those healing properties.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay. Now we'll move to my last recipe. I have to move things around. I'd like to bring my assistant back. I saw him in the store the first time I had a conversation with Peter about teaching this class, and he said, I'm your helper. So that sealed the deal. I don't know if I'll ever use it again. If you want to borrow it, him, let me know. Okay, here we go. Onto one of these. I bet some of you know it. Come on, Bree Farmer.
It's a radish, the daikon radish.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, this is a variety of daikon radish. It's actually considered a Chinese variety because it's more squat and fatter. I don't always like this variety because they can tend to be woody inside. Do you know what that term means when something's woody? It's just kind of fibrous and not an even texture, and it doesn't hydrate. It stays dried out, and it's just not pleasant. Um, I'll see if I can cut this. I promised myself I wouldn't do any cutting tonight, but I will. So this one doesn't look that fibrous. I'm hoping that you can see it. You could see the surface of it. When you cut vegetables, ideally you want the surface of the vegetable to be smooth. You want to use a knife that can help to create a smooth surface. That, in part, goes into the energetic value of your cooking. The cut slice creates a certain flavor, and when you're cutting, you want to be consistent in the way that you cook, the way that you cut rather, so that the flavors become more harmonized. I'm using a knife that is my show-off knife because it was more expensive than my usual ones. This is a blend of several different metals. It's a super sharp edge, and this doesn't need to be a knife you go out to buy, but a good one is called a Mac knife, MAC. That's a good brand that I like to recommend. And it's also super sharp, so you have to be careful with it. When you're going to a sharper knife, the most important thing is to extend your knuckles as you cut and not your fingertips. So you extend your knuckles and you anchor the tip of the blade and cut that way, or you can cut this way, but your knuckles are extended. The important thing is to cut slowly and try to be consistent in how you cut, and that's the important thing. When I first started to teach cooking, I was really like rapid fire, and I was all impressed with myself at how fast I could slice. Those days are long gone, and the good thing is that I don't care about it. So, just a point about that. The last recipe is for lemon daikon pickles. And what I did this earlier today, and it actually doesn't look that good. I'll show it to you, but it just looks a little, let's say, lackluster. Doesn't look good, but I would think that the recipe should work for you well. What I tried to describe in the recipe is that you have grated daikon in a bowl and you add salt. I always like to use sea salt because it's not just sodium chloride. You have a rich variety of minerals and trace minerals intact in a sea salt. So you take your grated daikon and you add your salt, and then you mix it with your fingers and you try to coat all of the daikon with the sea salt. And by coating it, you're doing what? You're releasing the moisture from the vegetable and you're allowing the pickling process to begin. Now, these are considered a quick pickle because they really won't start to ferment and sour, but I just wanted to show you like a beginner's way of making a natural pickle. If you wanted to let this sit longer, uh, it would eventually start to sour. And once it does sour, what's happening is that all these digestive enzymes are being released into the pickling process, which in turn help to restore your intestinal flora, which in turn helps your body to absorb nutrients. Oftentimes, by eating a diet that's really high in processed foods, the intestinal villi, those hair-like fiber in the intestines, become depleted and a little lazy. And by having a little bit of fermented food with a meal is helpful, whether it be a simple recipe like this, using salt and lemon juice, a little bit of oil and fresh dill, or by buying store-bought pickles and things like that, can make a big difference. What you don't want to do is eat a lot of it. You know, sometimes people think some is good, more is better. This is not the case, excuse me, with this particular type of preparation. So I really don't even want to show it to you because it looks kind of sad. So say goodbye to that. Make it at home and tell me your results. Hopefully it will turn out. Um, you can use any kind of root vegetable for this kind of recipe. You could thinly slice onions. Cauliflower is a good one. And you could also substitute the lemon juice for our latest and greatest ingredient, the umeboshi plum, because this is a natural pickling element. So pickling is considered a cooking method because you're changing something that's raw into another state by pickling it. So now is the time for a glut of questions, or just, did anyone bring a vegetable to talk about? Did anyone bring a special ingredient? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know if that shout out came across so well, but I think what I would like to do is take a quick break. And if anyone would like to run to the refrigerator and grab a vegetable that you'd like to acknowledge, let's do that. I won't be back shortly. So thank you. Have anything from the fridge? Yay. Cecilia, what do you have?
I have a tomato, small tomato.
Pretty one. How do you, what do you cook with that, or what do you do with that?
I normally make a lot of salads with tomato, and I've been adding tomatoes to when I cook like potatoes or things in the. I put it together with potatoes and sweet potatoes, and in a warm preparation, not just
Sounds
like the,
delicious.
yeah.
Sounds good.
I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm late. I thought I got the time right. I thought it was
We
7
started
p.m.
a
or
bit. We started a bit earlier for tonight's
oh,
session. We started at 7 Eastern tonight.
okay. So might be earlier. Okay, sorry. I'll check the recording.
Great, great. Brooke, I saw you shake something in the air.
We have a bunch of beautiful beets, and we're particularly interested in what we can do with the beet greens.
Well, you could send them to me. No, the beet greens are so vibrant and so beautiful. Just the color in and of itself, that magenta is beautiful. Uh, they're an, they're great sautéed with onions and garlic. They're delicious that way. I like to add them into soups. You know, there, and if you wanted to get really creative, show me the size of the leaf.
For comparison,
So, so
yeah.
it's a pretty big leaf. What you could do is blanch it in cold water, take it out, just dip it in, take it out, get some grated carrot and a little bit of toasted sesame seeds and roll it up and make a like a vegetable roll.
Interesting.
You could use a sushi mat to guide it if you wanted that. You could use a piece of wax paper to guide it if you didn't have a sushi mat, or you could just use your hands.
Very creative. I love that. That
They're
would be,
delicious.
yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else brings? Oh, ooh, pickling.
Sort
What'd you
of.
make?
I was excited when you were talking about ginger and turmeric because I have an intimate relationship with fire cider. So I made my batch of fire cider earlier today with turmeric and ginger and garlic and onion and lemon and different hot peppers I picked up at the farmer's market.
That is a party, Brie.
Everyone is like, "What are you drinking?" You sweeten it to taste. I literally drink it as like a shot if my immune system is down. Or I put it into my water, or I put it all over my salad. It makes wonderful dressing.
I'd love to see a recipe.
You're not familiar with
I am, but I don't have any recipes coming, you know, my way. I'd love to see one.
I will happily share. Rosemary Gladstar published a book of recipes worldwide, and I got it at the beginning of the pandemic. And I tell myself, whether it's placebo or not, that this is why I haven't had COVID yet.
Good for
Thank,
you.
thank you for letting
Thank
me
you.
share. Yeah.
Anyone else? Oh,
Um,
Elle.
oh, go ahead, Elle.
You go first. You go.
Oh, well, I kind of cheated. I grabbed an herb from the greenhouse. My favorite herb to grow are bay leaves.
How nice. How do you use them?
Well, that's the great thing. I put them in everything. Every time I make a pot of beans or a soup, I always add them, and it just like easy way to add flavor.
Are they as aromatic as the dried ones?
More, I would say, and kind of I think like even oilier, or yeah, they're super fragrant.
Nice. Thank you. Elle?
I have a bouquet because I want extra credit. Um, we do have the bay leaves too. This was about the size of my hand, the bush, and now it's outgrowing everything. So I have neighbors take it, and if you were here, I'd give 1,000 of them to y'all. And this just goes into soup. I made a hot pot, Instapot, just threw vegetables in and threw these. There's old sage that is like 5 years old that still works. And then this is, if you have a place to just put it, this is kale. and I don't care that it's old. It lasted like two seasons already, maybe 3. And I still use it because I'm lazy and I don't want to plant anymore. But it seems to winter pretty well where I live. And it just goes into water. And then I also just wanted to show, if you have Misfits Market, they used to be a lot cheaper. They're not cheap now, but if you're selective, there's some interesting things. And this is a cabbage, and it went into the hot pot too. And it's really pretty. I can't remember what it's called. It's
Is
in the
that Napa?
Japanese cabbage. Yeah, that's it. So,
Yeah.
and it lasts a
Oh,
long
that's great.
time. So yeah. Yeah. Oh, and the dandelions were picked right from the garden, and I negotiate with my neighbors, and I ask if I can pick their dandelions, and they're pretty happy with it. So yeah, I forage with the
That's great.
expensive food and everything.
Anyone else? Well, oh, Sarah.
I've got a nice avocado here. So I grabbed this out of the kitchen and usually just eat it pretty much by itself with like whatever other little things I might be having. But I have made a like cacao avocado pudding before with one of these. So that's another special treat that it's been a while. When you said what you used it to cook, I'm like, oh well, I forgot that I have done that before, and maybe I should revisit that again.
I love those recipes with avocado and some chocolate in them. That's delicious. Thank you. I think we're on the home stretch. I just have one last thing. Do we have a few more minutes? Okay. Now, some of you may know this. Not very pretty from this view.
Is that a rutabaga?
Almost. It's a cousin to the rutabaga, a distant cousin. It's
Is it
a
Berta?
No. What?
Is that a lotus?
it's a lotus root. This is a very happy, crunchy vegetable. It likes to be cooked. You can drop it into a soup. It's really delightful in a miso soup. You wouldn't really add it to a heavy soup because it just doesn't show well. But you can also add it into a stir fry, and it stays a little bit crunchy. And another good source of fiber. Traditionally, it's used for the lungs and for congestion, and there are a number of different poultices used with the lotus root, and we'll save that for another class. But just wanted to show it because it's so pretty. In Japanese cooking, they'll stuff it with something, stuff it with like a miso sweetened paste, and then slice it into rounds, and then fry it in the skillet. Brie, I think you'll like that. I see those looks of interest, great interest. So, yeah. Well, thank you, Diabetes Sangha, for having me tonight. It has been an utter joy. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank
More,
you.
more cooking classes.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Karen.
This was
My
wonderful.
pleasure. My
Thank
pleasure.
you.
That was
More
Thank
great.
you.
cooking classes.
Totally.
you
Thanks,
for the
Karen.
Good idea.
Good night, everyone.
Night.
See you
Night.
soon.
Night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.